In terms of like, when you let's say an individual goes to learn a skill, first of all, most people are not
Mm,
attracted to trading due to the ability to want to, or the urge to want to learn a skill. Mostly it's due to the fact of, chasing a certain lifestyle, or trying to get a certain kind of money, or get out of a financial situation, right? But
right.
from what we have been learning so far and what you have seen, from and the perspectives you've seen, what
Mhm.
was your own concept when you came into trading, and what do you think trading is right now?
Oh,
So
person's
the
situation is
main
different,
topic
right?
of the
Mine is
day,
different.
I don't know, I got network interference again. Sorry about that. Could you repeat your
Yeah,
statement?
yeah, no worries. Okay, yeah. So every person's situation is different. So mine, of course, different. So my purpose of trading is just to generate like a passive income. It's not something I rely on because I am working jobs. So I'm like in that way. But having said that, in the job, especially in the North America, just don't know when is your day. What I mean by that is, like you never know when to let you go. So if I don't have there's no age limit, I thought this is one avenue where I can, learn the new skill and, on the side, no rush into it, just learn right as I'm working. So God forbid if that day comes, I have something to rely back upon instead of me one what's the next for me. So for
Mm,
me, the trading is not like, yes, I have to, like, I'm not putting pressure on myself. No, oh boy, like if I don't make money out of trading, then what? I'm content that because I have jobs, by God's grace, I'm doing fine in that. So no
mm,
issues. But I want to learn trading for also for for future generations, for my kids. I want to also teach them trading down same thing as teach them, okay, job is one thing, being self-employed thing. But again, the more set you have, you're more valuable out there in the market, right?
that's true.
So for them to be able to learn the skill, it's gonna put them in a more, I guess, confident state of mind. If they don't have the job that they can run the business, at least they have trading, right? Which they can
Yeah.
back up on. But again, in trading is more sort of like, they keep on saying, like, okay, psychological, like back, it's a lot. It's basically, right? Because when you see it turns into profit, you tend to close quickly where that is coming from, it's again from childhood we see of and you see like it's a brain thing, right?
Yeah.
You see something, okay, it's possible. Start dreaming about, oh, I can get this much for from this money, I can get this much. You tend to close early. And that's the problem is that you tend to hold on to your lose when you go in red because you're positive in your mind. No, it's going to return back. No, it's going to come back, right? I
Yeah.
want to get out of mind frame as well. Like I said, I'm not dependent on this. I have not put like a lot of money in this anyways. Just very minimal on the side because my focus is to learn and get confidence so that if situation comes, if even if I'm wrong, I'm learning from it and not handing out of it. So that's the
Mm.
right, and that's what I want to actually teach my kids down the road as well. When like very early because if the kids like when they become like adult age, if I teach them at that, they're gonna get addicted to it because they're young in their mind. I want to get them settled down in their 20s, whatever, for career. And that I want to be in the situation so I can teach them, okay, this is another skill set to learn, do it side, but don't solely rely on that.
Yeah.
That's the goal. That's for me what trade is basically right now at this time. So
That's a very strong perspective, though. That's a very, very nice one. And this is an aspect that is also as important as learning the technicals of trading as well, because you have to know what you have in mind. You have to know what you're expecting, so you could know when you have it. So most of the times, why people don't know, or why people don't recognize their sources, or what they define as sources, is simply not understandable to them. There's no perspective that they could say, this is what I want, because they haven't defined that, standard. And for a skill like trading, now I was seeing a video the other day, an African brother was speaking about trading, if it was gambling or not. And he was trying to give in the perspective that it's kind of like it falls into the category of gambling, because it's kind of like a
Hmm.
system or a game where you are not 100% certain of the outcome, regardless of how much you know, you know?
Hmm.
And when you find yourself in a system like that, it's always smart to understand that it's not something you can rely on as a daily, day-to-day means of income, because it still falls
Hmm.
under not being certain. And there are some certain things in life that are a necessity that you have to be certain about. The only category trading falls under a skill that is balanced is if you are financially stable. Okay. So it's not a skill that could help you gain financial stability, but rather it could support you and also give you more money if you have money, you know. But on a scale of saying it's a skill you want to depend on to the point where you want to say you don't want to do any other thing else, then you're probably in your 40s or your 50s when you would say you've already lived much part of your life and you're kind of like looking into retirement and you have enough to actually invest into that retirement. So then you stand the higher chance of actually being
Hmm.
succeeding in trading. And then there's also
Hmm.
the other perspective to it, which is what I'm doing, kind of like in an industrial aspect where I create educational content and try to build a reputation, like a career out of it, out of teaching
Hmm.
and also out of sharing analysis to the public. That's a different thing. That's what I'm trying. That's why it's the message I try to pass to people. If you do admire that, then you should understand that that's a different thing, and it's an industry of its
Hmm.
own. It's a media industry, a social media industry. And then on the aspect of what trading is itself, is a personal system, is a personal mechanism where you have to craft yourself with the knowledge you get from it, because there's a lot of knowledge available. There's a lot
Hmm.
of knowledge from technicals to risk management to finance to different fields of civilization in general within trading.
Hmm.
And at the same time, you have to, know what you're after so you don't get lost in the void. And why I ask this question is because expectations are one of the biggest enemies of humanity, because we sometimes our expectations bring us to our limitations. And that is when what we expect is not what we get. We start to limit our ideology to a certain, perspective. And that is the only view we can see when we look at what we think we're doing. But let's keep it at that. Let's keep it at that. And I like the fact that you see it's a skill you want to pass down to your children too as well, because it's going to be here for a long time, and is
Hmm.
certainly a skill that could also help you invest in even in stocks, which is more tangible than Forex. I don't know if you know anything about that. Are you with me?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Right. No, I understand. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So
also
because
because I do some like stock things too, so I do plan to use that skill to towards
yes,
that. But right not that level, I'm not comfortable. That's why
yeah.
I've just invested in like very big things for now. So, yeah, but down the plan.
And most of the time, the smartest stock traders are actually those who came from the technical aspect of trading, because they end up having a lot of knowledge and understanding of how the technical aspect of a stock, company works, and at the same time having the fundamental backings of the data available from that company. It's quite different from
Mhm.
trading forex, because you can also invest for the long run and hold the stock share value and receive dividend on it at the same time, and then pass that skill down to your kids, where you can also give them access to such assets, and it ends up becoming generational wealth if you look at it from that perspective, you know so it's that powerful. It really is that powerful, but at the same time it has to be from a perspective that is reasonable and logical, so it can be able to be processed. For me personally, what I plan to do after I don't know if you notice, I'm having a series on YouTube right now, the blending trade, sorry, the Malaysian SNL technical method that I post within the weeks. I don't know if you've seen any episode.
No, I have not seen that yet.
Okay. So after that, I plan to post few videos about stocks trading and try to see how I can move into educating the public about how to, trade stocks and then invest in it for the long run to gain dividend and how that aspect works. So maybe, along the way, if you tag
Right.
along the YouTube channel, you could see some content that could help you, with what you have learned from here. Okay.
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. So let's look into today's official technical topic, which is sections. And like
Mhm.
I said earlier, sections are kind of like the mini versions of multi-time frame analysis, which is top-down analysis. Because sections are kind of like the lower time frame of, they are, not just kind of, they are the lower time frame of the daily. And it's the sections that breaks down. Well, okay, let me put it this way. When you look at trading, we have the market coming down from different perspectives. We have the New York market, the New York market section. We have the London market section. We have the Tokyo market section, right?
Right.
So, and these are different time zones within the world where commerce and financial activities are carrying on at different times. So there's an interface where the market is more active during one section than the other. Okay. So being able to
Right.
understand these sections and how they intertwine with each other, sometimes you're able to identify when liquidity is being swiped out of the market, when liquidity is being engineered in the market, and sometimes you're able to position yourself in a winning position where you can capitalize on that information as well. But as I said, it deals with sections. So it can either help you gain an entry for a long swing position based on top-down analysis, or it can help you do intraday trading of trading within sections that is holding from New York and then closing in London. Okay.
Mhm. Right.
So let me I'm trying to let's go down to the lower time frame. I'm trying to see if I could bring out my tools. Okay, section break. Here it is. Are you with me? Can you see my screen?
Yeah, I can see it.
So it's called section break. So oh yeah,
Okay.
yes. So you see, so every
Yeah.
every every stop is a different day. And so there are other tools as well that could help, but this is the first. So I'm introducing you to this one. This helps you to on the daily. It breaks down a different section. But you see, it's not available here right now. Let me
Mhm.
let me zoom out back.
Right.
All right, because it doesn't break down anything. But if you go to the weekly, you don't see anything as well. You go to the monthly,
Mhm.
it's not useful because there's no section on the monthly. That's why I say section can help you understand entries, either taking a trade from one section, from the London section to the New York section, because it's just a minor information. It's data within the day. It's not relevant on the higher time frame.
Mhm.
Or you have a higher time frame analysis, that is, you've done your proper analysis, and then on the lower time frame, you want to use the section to get the proper entry. So on the daily time frame,
Mhm.
you have to now break it down, to the lower time frames, which is when we say the 4 hour time frame, the 1 hour time frame. Okay, let's say for example, we have this is USD JPY. Okay, so this is a bearish
Mhm.
price action, and this is an area of interest. Okay, but you will need more confirmations to take a trade from this, and then let's say you have this, right? So if you go down to the lower time frame, now you have more information. If you look at this is on the 4 hour time frame. So we this is the previous day, previous daily close, previous day opening. You see, open and close of each day. So when we say liquidity, this point can be seen as liquidity. As you can see, it's the intersection between these 2 days. And this was now a key level on the daily time frame, giving us confluence to what we are doing. So we can say, okay, there's every tendency that this is a key level, as we can see it's an intersection on the 4 hour time frame. If we go down to the 1 hour time frame,
Mhm.
which I prefer the most because that way you see the price action much clearer. Now we see we see
Yeah.
we see a reaction here. Now I'm not saying I would buy or I would sell from this point, but I could say, okay, what's the closest I could what's the reasonable thing that could happen to this point? The close and open of a candle is liquidity. Okay, the close
Mhm.
and open of a candle because it's those are swing points. So it can either be a protected low or a target high. A target low
Mhm.
or a protected high, right? And even a protected low can also be liquidity once the agenda is complete, once the storyline is complete. So every high and low is just money resting on Bovie because they're just buys and sells and price closing, right?
Mhm.
So this is a section in an intersection from one day to the other. So this has to be liquidity. Okay. So now what do we see if we look at that price action? Then I would say this is um multiple highs. We can see the fair value gap here. I could tap this as liquidity, and then this is a hidden base. So this is a hidden base because there would be another block on the lower time frame there. It's not visible on this time
Mhm.
frame, but if we go to the lower time frame, we'll see the candle much clearer. You see? So there's another block there. So this will be liquidity supporting this other block. Do you see how easy it was for me to, break that down to an understandable perspective just by identifying the key levels and the sections? Okay, this is just the
Mhm.
first use of section. I'm going to show you another trick, just making it easy for you to understand top-down analysis using market sections. Okay,
Mhm.
so
Yes.
now, like I said, this is the section of one day to another. So this is just the close and open. And then we have the intersection between each day. And that's where I use this indicator instead. So there are indicators you can use to identify those stuffs on my indicator bar here. So this can be used to identify just the Asian range. Okay. This and section was originally introduced by ICT. I don't know if you've heard of ICT method.
Yeah, I've heard about him. Yeah.
Okay, so section trading was originally introduced by ICT trading. So most of the context you could find online about sections are actually linked to ICT. So just in case you start seeing stuff like ICT kill zone and ICT that and you start to wonder what could these stuffs be all about? It's just the use of sections from one section to another, or so it's nothing new. It shouldn't freak you out, or it shouldn't throw you off course whenever you're studying or trying to trade if you should see something like that. Okay, it's the same thing you learned here today. Okay, so this is the tool, and then this is what is identifying now. Now I'm going to zoom out now, then I'll break it down for you. So as you can see,
Mhm.
if you notice the section, you see now the chart is kind of like looking like an institutional chart now and what they do, right? Because previously it was looking very
Right.
empty.
Yeah.
And why it's like that is because most of the times the institutional guys will use confirmations to trade rather than using just their instincts. So for me, I'm making analysis, so I just use them when I have to, and then I keep my chart clean when I need to, so I don't get confused. So, different purpose. So now, if you look at the section, it changes from each day. I explained this was a day from one day to another day, right? So as you can see, it's ending on this day, and then every color is a different section. So this is a kill zone. This is a kill zone. This section would be ending here. So that would be in the morning. So we live in different time zones. So I won't be able to explain it exactly to you, but you can check it out with your own time zone. When you use the indicator, it will be broken down to your own time zone. Or you could use the time of my own time to look at what time it is on your end. Okay. But
Okay.
the time zones the price action will look the same if we're on the same pair, but the time zones will be different because we're living in different time. You're in Canada and I'm in Nigeria, so these are different times. So this would be Asian section, the first section of the day. Let's make it easier to understand. Let me add on the Asian tool so we could be able to see the Asian section itself. Okay.
Mm.
So you notice this indicator just came in, right? Can you see the indicator? If I zoom out, you will see more price action and you'll find them there. So you see this section here.
Oh,
So that is called the Asian section.
oh,
Okay, so the indicator is trying to identify the Asian section. So let me just use this now. So what the Asian section is the first section of the day, right? So this is midnight my time. Asian section, that will be daytime over there, but it will be midnight my time. And then the intersection between Asian and London section, the yellow will be London section because London section comes next after Asian section. Okay. And then there's an
Okay.
intersection between um, London section and New York section. So the next would be New York section.
Okay.
So Asian, New York. Sorry, London. This will be London.
Yeah, London's first.
Okay. So this is London section, New York section, and then you see the end of the day, you see the intersection. This is Tokyo section mostly. I don't know if you've heard of Tokyo section. It's still as Asian section, but it's kind of like let me take this out so I don't get it confused. So this would be you see this other end here.
Right.
So that is Tokyo. Tokyo is still Asian section, but this would be this joining into this. So this point is the key zone. This is the key zone of Asian section because it is the intersection of the day. So the key zone is identified with the green spot. The key zone of London is identified with the green spot. And then if you look at
Mhm.
price actions within these points, you can see that at the end of it, there's always a reaction. Or at the beginning of it, there's always a
Oh,
reaction. You can see here, at the end of this section, price changed. You see that, right? The reactions changed.
right. Right.
Look at this. It came here, it gave a reaction here. The trend was still bearish, so it didn't change. So it only gave a reaction at the end of this section. Then the next section continued the trend. But the end of this section started the retracement. So there's no section that is certain that would definitely change the market. But the end of each section, is always going to give a reaction. Either it's going to change the trend of the day, because remember, we're dealing with the day, not the higher time frames anymore. So this would be the daily trend. As you can see here, it was bearish within
Mhm.
Asian section. At the end of Asian section, it went bullish. This is London. In London section, it went bullish. At the end of London section, we had a new retracement. And that retracement came into the um, range of the previous section, creating this. And then the key zone of New York section started a new bullish trend to the beginning of Tokyo section, which is the start of Asian section of the intersection that takes us to the next day. And then we see a new reaction. So you know what we do is that section is a very broad topic. Okay. And
Mhm.
not to get you confused, we're going to since we are going to be having two sections within this week, and we're going to have Saturday to also discuss about it as well. But what we do is that to keep it simple, I want you to digest how each section reacts. The high and low of Asian section can also be used to trade. I will break that down in a different video so that we don't get confused. But I would also send you some videos which I've also talked about these sections in the past so you can watch them too. And then let me go. They are all available on YouTube. You're not the first guy I've mentored, so we have recordings of previous guys' mentorship. And I just teach them the same stuff with a more clearer as I evolve, the explanations get more clear. So yours might be more clear than that, but it's practically the same information. Okay.